I'll jump in first. Yeah, I'm Joanne McLean from the Financial Health Institute. Yeah, we're based in Denver. Provide services obviously in various locations, and we generally do training that's related to personal finance and economics, but then everything relates to personal finance and economics, including how we run our organizations, right? So that's one reason why we really enjoy working with Fred Richmond and the Center on Applied Management Practices. So take it away, Fred.
Thanks, Joanne. Yeah, we also are located also in Denver, Colorado, as well as Camp Hill, Pennsylvania, which is a suburb of the capital, Harrisburg, about 2 hours from Philadelphia, to give a little perspective there. We have worked with Financial Health Institute, Joanne's organization, for at least 7-8 years, and we have learned from each other. This presentation, the series of the 4 on LIHWAP, is a collaboration bringing together our areas of knowledge and and experience working in the human services, nonprofit, local government community. So we're pleased once again that Cal Kappa offered us the opportunity to work with you and provide some ideas for the LIHWAP program. So appreciate your time, and we're here for an hour, and I think Joanne and I are more than welcome. If you want to talk, ask questions in the middle, please feel free to put your hand up, or I'll send something in chat, and we'd be happy to address anything along. This is not a super long presentation, so we're flexible. Okay.
Definitely flexible.
Yeah. Okay, so Joanne, I think, yeah, there you go.
It's all yours.
That's me. I'm sorry. I just looked at the other one here. Yeah, thank you. Thank you. Okay. So we are believers, strong believers in flowcharts. Of course, you can't miss the pun here, but that's not our invention. And a flowchart, and again, we found some really good material on the web. You can see here for the American Society for Quality, and there is a link. Just want to know, Lawrence will be posting the PowerPoint to the Cal Kappa website, so you'll have that available for yourself. Basically, what you're looking at are 3 major pieces here. Flowchart is separate steps of a process, and the key is in a sequential order. So any organization, whether it's documented or not, formal or informal, does operate with steps in a process. It may not always be so obvious, or it may not be the simplest, but there is a process. And essentially, we champion the flowchart ourselves because we can see tremendous utility for documenting, mapping administrative or service processes, planning, etc. So what we're looking at is the 3rd statement there, is that it's actions, it's the materials, and you'll see how we present this PowerPoint today, and also who's involved, what are the decisions, time. I'll give you the origin in 2 seconds of where this popped into my head. Quite a few years ago, I was working with another software company, and I asked them, simple question, how do you know where the data lies in the organization? And they said, we create a flowchart. And I only thought that, all right, I never gave much thought to it, but like that sort of like was magic to me, because as you know, our organization does consulting, but we also have software. And the fact that you can draw a chart that serves so many purposes is incredibly useful to not just LIHWAP, but frankly, anywhere in your organization. So that's, pretty much our little commentary. And I personally really believe in the stuff. And okay, and I know Joanne does too. So, all right. So Joanne, I have one more here. Thank you.
Yep.
Yep. And what we want to point out is this. You have 2 representations here of, again, these are global statements about how community action, or for that matter, nonprofits, but really community action operates. You have the model on the left, which you'll recognize as a silo approach. Okay, each program operates by itself. It might have a supervisor manager. The outcomes, the services, they're all housed in a silo, a single column. On the right is how others operate, where the programs are integrated and then the services are integrated and the outcomes are integrated. The reason I mention this is in the um, the Office of Community Services webinar that we posted on the last, I guess last Thursday, we had provided a link and we showed you some highlights of, I thought was a really good webinar in terms of organizational development. And we'll talk about this a little bit, but what they were recommending was that LIHWAP should be considered as integrated into other programs in terms of intake data collection as opposed to a solo, silo operation. Our point being is that, look, we're not trying to change the way you operate, but a flow chart would take into account either model. If you're operating silos, if you're operating integrated, or a hybrid of the two, our recommendation would be that you develop a flow chart that simply accommodates the particular management organizational structure that you have in your agency. So, Joanne, anything you want to add there, or move on?
Yep, move on. Yep, I think that's basic.
Okay.
Yeah, if you did hybrid, obviously, then you would have some things that are put together. Maybe you have weatherization together with housing and Head Start together with WIC, but they're two separate silos that way too. So yeah, you could track any of them, right?
Mm-hmm.
No matter what.
Right. So let's look at the benefits, which is our next one. Again, that flow chart on the right, we had designed that as a teaching tool based on real experience. And again, if you're trying to think about why you're having your colleagues do this, there's some real benefits to that. One, the old cliche, a picture's worth 1,000 words. You can spend all day long explaining how something works, but if you map it out like this, it really changes, especially using the shapes and the story you're going to tell. It is a way of simplifying complex procedures and processes in a very structured manner. You can describe an entire organization on a single page. It allows you to analyze by breaking down into the pieces the different processes and areas that may work, the areas don't work as well. Another thing that sometimes people forget about is it is a really good tool for onboarding and training new staff, training stakeholders. Those, could be your board, it could be people in the community. My own experience with this is if you bring a chart like this into a meeting and say, this is how our organization works, you get the oohs and the ahs. People go, wow, especially if you make it pretty and nice colors. They assume, hopefully correctly so, this organization is viable, clear, knows what it's doing, efficient, effective, things like that. And we put in bold the last one because a lot of times data information is haphazard in organizations. The fact is that any software company should be able to work with an agency and simply say, look, the data flows as the people flow, as the clients flow. So it's important that a tool like this has an overlay, and we'll get to this a little later in the presentation, about data flowing along the organization. And that's why you use a flow chart. It's very, very simple. Who does what, when, how, etc. So we take a look at one more slide here. Thank you. And again, simple checklist. I like to think of these as a checklist. Okay, that's why the checks are there. If you can show on a chart about understanding how a process, and by the way, you can share this with clients. Our experience is that clients should be in many ways part of this process as well. You can use it for improving how you, essentially administer your programs. You communicate to others how you're doing it, and also communication between staff involved with the same process. People in organizations don't always know what their colleagues are doing. And the last two, of course, it's documenting the process, which is really important, somewhat cliched, efficiency and effectiveness, but I think this is a foundation for documenting the agency's prowess and able to do this. And again, in a planning sense. So I think that perhaps a little bit oversell, but I really do believe in this particular product. And I think you learn as much from the exercises doing it as you do when it's finished. And I think Joanne will talk a little bit about that next.
Yeah, so we get started. And I get to talk about these things because I like to be the artistic creating type of person here. So, a lot of times people think, oh, I need to make a flow chart and I should do it in flowchart software, or yeah, like as you'll see the flow charts that we're going to be showing, yeah, created them in PowerPoint. But that's not where I would start. I wouldn't start in PowerPoint. I wouldn't start in Excel. It would not start even with a specially designed flow charting type of software, because in the initial phases, you're going to be kind of trying things out and you're going to forget stuff and you're going to look at it and say, oh, it isn't quite like that. So it's really helpful to have something that is very flexible and also intuitive and often just visceral, the touch part of it. So flip chart paper, sticky notes, and a marker is all you need for making a flow chart. So you start out, you gather your tools, and you can get different colored sticky notes. That often is like a really cool idea, and different size sticky notes too. So you can like distinguish among different types, different colors of markers. If you want to do pencils first, that's fine too, but do markers. So you get color once you get in there. So define the process. So start out by what's the title of this? Come up with a title. What is it we're flowing? What is the thing that we're going to be charting through this process? Is it the standard general process of your agency? Is it the process for how clients and data flow through a particular program like LIHWAP? Is it, if you're starting a new program, once again, LIHWAP could be like you're starting something new. What do you need to do to get it going? You can flow chart any of that. So start with a paper sketch, define the process, do a title, and boundaries. Okay, you're not going to just flow chart everything in the universe. So like define, if it's a program, it's a program. What are we doing? What are the boundaries? And then just start brainstorming, like what works, what doesn't work. What do you do, in which order you do it. So if you write it on a sticky note and you realize, oh no, that's not the right order, then you can move them around. So just start putting the sticky notes onto the piece of paper, and then you can start putting the marker lines once you think, yeah, we're pretty good in there, we got this going, and the marker can start defining and naming certain things. So you arrange it in sequence, and then when all the activities are included, when you think everyone's got it and everyone agrees that the sequence is correct, you start drawing it in as arrows to show the flow. And then you've got a diagram of a flow chart on there that you may think it's great, and then you want to show it to other people, whether it's other folks in your agency, colleagues, supervisors, people who supply services and equipment to you, or definitely your customers. As Fred was saying, it's always ideal to see how a client, a person in the role of receiving services, views the process that they are going through at your agency. It can really be an eye-opening experience. So you've drawn it, you got everything in place, you've had it reviewed, you readjust it based on the review, you've got yourself a flow chart. So here's just a few considerations to think about, especially in the very beginning. Don't worry about it making it the right way. Don't worry too much about, like, is this the way that a flow chart is supposed to be drawn? That's one of the advantages of the sticky notes, that it feels a lot more informal. You want to get the flow first. You want to get the feel of it first before you refine it and standardize it. And involve all key people. Anybody that's involved, bring them in, whether it's interviewing them before you have your brainstorming session and start flowing the chart, or whether you're having them look at it afterwards, or both. So there's getting information before, there's the process of doing, and then there's a process of reviewing and feedback. It's all part of it. And it's better, that last one on there, don't assign a technical expert. It's often best to have a person who really knows, like the person who's your frontline data entry person, the person who knows what really is happening, to be the person who actually draws it. The technical expert, if you have one in the room, can be giving advice, giving feedback about it, but they're usually not going to be the one that really gets it done right. The person who gets it done right is the person who lives it, who really knows how it's done. So a couple of people ask about, like, what are those weird shapes all about? And you don't have to use them, but these are some basic ones that people tend to use when you're doing a flow chart. So, rounded rectangle for starter end. A lot of times you get those rectangles for the process, arrows, of course, directions. Diamonds are a decision point. It's where you got a choice of actions. And that kind of stands out then when you got them on your chart. So those are a few of the basics. There's plenty more if you want to use them, but this tends to really cover the territory pretty well. So before we might, yeah. So any questions about constructing flowcharts? Pretty basic. Actually, I put one more thing into the list of what you should do. You should always have fun when you're creating a flowchart. And that should be one of the required parts of doing this. If you start taking this like really too seriously, you can get bogged down in like minutiae and stuff. Just have fun while you're at it. So we're going to start putting some of this into practice, right? So there's two audiences that you want to address in some of these flowcharting, thinking about the LIHWAP program. And one of them is for outreach and marketing and thinking about the water companies here. Okay. Another one is going to be for persons receiving the LIHWAP services. And Fred will talk about that in a minute. But if we're thinking about outreach and marketing from water companies, here's some of the questions that are really good to be asking yourself. So what's the process of connecting and working with the water companies? Do you have a formal relationship or do you work with them informally? Is it like a one contact person who's responsible, right? One contact person on your end and multiple on theirs, or multiple on yours and one contact person on theirs? How many water companies do you have in your area? You may only have one or you may have a lot, all right? I'm sure you all know at this point. So it may work differently, therefore, with different water companies. Okay. Is there an ongoing sharing of information? And that's something, once again, think about this. This is something you can ask for any program, any process you're doing. An ongoing sharing of information is different than a one-time, let's get this thing set up and then we got it figured and we move on, right? If there's ongoing, is the data shared electronically? Is it manual? Do you call each other up on the phone and tell each other? So how is the information shared? Is it client specific or is it aggregate client data that you're sharing? Or at some points, is it client specific and other times you're aggregating client data? So think about those different types of data that you're sharing. And then what data or information is shared between the community action agency and the water company? So what type of data are you sharing? Or what types, because multiple. And then, yeah, once again, is communication ongoing or is it ad hoc as needed? Do you have a standard time you talk to them, or is it when somebody's applying at that point that you contact? And then other is just there to keep in mind that this isn't an all exclusive list. There could well be plenty of other things you might think are relevant in here. So moving from there, if think about the first steps for the water companies. And once again, thinking about how we were talking about doing it just in general, you're going to want to sketch out sequential connections that answer the questions we were just asking. Number the symbols when they come up, where there's an activity, and describe the activity. And then list the numbers from the flowchart and describe each activity in more depth. Pretty simple. So next slide, I'm going to show you, like, Fred and I really know absolutely nothing about how LIHWAP works. But so we were doing our best guess about how you're actually getting started working with water companies. So let's see, like, how well you think we managed some of this. And this is, like I said, this is our first attempt at figuring out, okay, well, how would this function as far as we can tell? So you have a beginning point, an initial contact with the XYZ water company, right? then there's a type of action choice here. So that's why we labeled that number one, because I define like, what do we mean by type of action? One type is program management, another type is community relations. They're handled differently, the flow is different. In program management, you're going to want to, you're going to identify the type of data to collect and report. And then you're also going to be wanting to develop processes for verification and payment and all those technical things you're doing, right? And that all leads to establishing reporting schedule and releasing the reports. So this is just the start of it, right? Just to get a feel for like how these things might flow. On the other side, yeah, you're going to want to do community relations. So you have to identify key community contacts and develop some kind of a marketing method, really, PSA. And then from that information, you begin a marketing campaign. There'll be more that flows out of that, right? So how do you think we're doing so far on this? Oh, I got a thumbs up. Hey, we're doing good, Fred. So, and this
That's
is more
good. 1 out of 20. We're batting 5%. I like it.
Yeah.
All right.
Yeah, and Lawrence added PowerPoint is now a decent
Right.
tool to use the shapes. Yep. So this is exactly what we're seeing here. That I built this one in PowerPoint after we did some like initial kind of sketching kind of routine, right?
Sure.
But if you want it to look neat, you can put it in PowerPoint like this, and then you can move that into Word, or you can do whatever you want to do with it. You can also animate it. If you're going to be showing this off to stakeholders, you could have the flow actually animated. So if you're into PowerPoint, it's a really cool tool for this. Anyway, so the numbers on the screen that we had before, like number one, type of action. Here's the more detailed explanation for each step. And Fred, did you want to say something?
Sure. Yeah, I think the magic is right here. I have never seen, I mean, we came up with this idea of putting the numbers on it, and maybe others did too. But to me, this really provides the rationale and the understanding, and also can communicate. So most flowcharts I've seen just are the pictures without the numbers. You have to sort of guess what's behind the curtain, so to speak, or behind the box. And in this case, again, and Joanne and I are really, obviously, we're not experts in this. We were just thinking a common sense approach, but our idea is to provide a template for you who are the experts if you find this useful to map it out. So this is the water company by itself. And from what we read online and the different websites, there are all different models that are out there from what I could see. So essentially what you're trying to do is use this as much a teaching, training, internal management tool. So if you look at, say, number 2, program management, well, by having it at the outlined, who are the key people? What are the roles and responsibilities? So if we're going to work with water companies, we need to know who we're talking to. If you're doing marketing, which is number 3, what message are you communicating? How do you identify target populations? I remember seeing an agency had to do a needs assessment. So what it did is it typed up the needs assessment and dropped them off at the local libraries. I didn't think that was going to work, because you have to show up at the library. They didn't understand the mechanism for that. So that wasn't LIHWAP, that was something else. All right. And number 4, what data are you going to collect? Well, there's probably a combination of mandatory data and data you might want to collect on your own. I mean, community action does give you the flexibility to collect additional data if you think would benefit the client and the operations of the agency. What kind of process? Number 4, for verification. Again, I go back to that really good OCS video, that 25-minute video that I really encourage you to look at, because I'll tell you what really surprised me. You see a lot of videos. I thought that one had one of the most in-depth thinking and how to run your agency. In other words, they're very clear. Make LIHWAP part of other processes. Don't set them up separately, et cetera. So obviously we're, thinking about that. Number 5, what kind of scheduling do you have for reporting? Number 6, how you're going to market, PSAs, et cetera, and then do the marketing campaign. Now, again, given our limited knowledge of this, the idea here is this is not the way, it's just a idea to help you think through what might be an approach that would make sense for yourself. So let's take a look at the next slide. So again, this is the water company. And what we're trying to just get at here is a little bit of a reminder, okay, that again, client and data, they flow together, okay? And we're talking about a sequence of services provided by the agency, how the client moves through the, among the program services. Well, data is attached to that. If you could almost tag someone and carry the data with them, that's sort of their backpack in a way, okay? So we're trying to map out that particular flow. I know it's a bit overkill here, but let's also make a distinction between data and information. We consider data facts, statistics, numbers, words. Information is, what do you do with it? How do you analyze it? What story you're going to tell? So you could be the best data collector in the world and have it mapped out, but you also need to think about those reports need to tell a story. How many folks did we assist and help achieve or eliminate their arrearages? Bills that were paid so people could continue to receive water, things like that. So I think you're probably familiar with this, going through Roma training and other similar type of trainings. But again, I want to point out that the sort of bad pun here is going to say the overflow of data on top of the flow chart is really what we're trying to get across here. So let's look at the next slide. Okay, and this is something you might be a little more familiar with. Is essentially of, a community action agency. So you can see here on the surface, pretty straightforward, initial client contact, the type of client, today we have all types of clients, and you'll see the following slide breaks this into detail. So an initial contact, at least someone comes in the door, type of client, as we know, people contact you through emails, text, walk-ins, phone calls, but each of those have a implication. You'll notice here that all of those clients ultimately feed into a potential intake. If you'll notice on the top left there, you might be able to triage some of the internet people becoming eligible. I don't know if you do this in your agency, but there should be a count of all contacts just to know how busy your agency is. A lot of times people don't count people coming in who essentially come in to check out a program, but they're not eligible and they leave. But I think you need to know the bigger picture. That's really part of your needs assessment, okay? So if you go to your intake, as you can see here, there are two possibilities. Notice the arrows. In intake number 2, you're ineligible and you're done, or you're eligible. And then if you're eligible, you identify services. Now, what you would ultimately do is have, if you think about it, two flip charts, two flow charts, and you would have the water company alongside the agency one. In other words, what's the relationship between the two? Because in essence, you are partners. So if we look at the next slide here, this is sort of much more explained. Again, we kept this fairly simple for the sake of the activity today, but you're really putting in here all of those procedures and processes that make an effective and efficient human service agency. So as you can see here, and by the way, just so you know, you could add to this. This was just for the purpose of the PowerPoint, keeping it fairly simple. You see your 4 types of contacts. You see your intake number 2, and again, LIHWAP, and if you know from the other PowerPoints, LIHEAP, and you know this better than we do, have very similar, if not the same, demographic characteristic data. You collect the financial data. You also want to look at some of this in terms of the activity. How many applications are taken? This is where you put this in. In other words, they're taken, but someone has to sort of collect that through a report. If I was the manager there, I'd want to know how busy that program is. Are they taken daily, weekly, et cetera? And what other data, might be required. So essentially that intake could be far more bullets that are in there, those 4, but again, they were put in just really gives an example. So let's look at number 3, eligibility. Well, if someone is coming in for LIHEAP, common sense would sort of suggest that, well, let's take that same data and see if they are eligible for other programs or services. And again, that OCS video did talk about Medicaid, SNAP, I think other programs that are within the world of community action that you could serve, called double social utility, dual purpose, that if you identify eligibility for one, you do it for the other. And then you'd need to know, in that number 3, ultimately, what information are you sharing with the water company? You also might want to count the number of approved applications. You might compare the applications to the availability of funds. You can't offer a service if there is a lack of funds. So a lot goes into this. This is, in a way, fundamental organizational management. So all of that comes out in that step. And there are other steps. Let's look at number 4. Again, what information is shared with the water company? We need to identify what is shared, what is required, what is needed, what do they need? They have a different mission than you. Okay, when is the information to be shared? And the question is who? Okay, who at the community action agency and who in the water company? And again, we're basing some of this on our research, trying to, read through the websites for the water companies, community action, as well as some of the comments that showed up in social media where people were apparently not all that successful, but was also pointed out too that it may not be the fault of the organization or the water company. All we know is that there's somewhat of a disconnect. So to me, I think the most beneficial thing that we could do here is to connect, in other words, to map out, as I said, the water company. If you find this useful, this is not required. Obviously, this is just our, possibility offering some tools, and do the same with the community action agency part. The other thing is, if this makes sense to you, is this something you just want to do anyway? I mean, LIHWAP in a way is the facilitator of this. Could you see a value in laying out your entire client flow? And some of you probably have done this, I suspect. So that is more or less our take on this. Joanne, is there anything you want to add to this? And I'd say it's a shorter day, but I think I would love to have discussion here if anyone is interested.
Yeah, I think that's a great point for point to do some discussion here. And one of the questions, the first question that we had, we'd love to have some feedback from everyone on. Do you use flowcharts already at whichever part of your business you're in? And who uses a flowchart at this point? Linda's got to know.
Well, we
Anyone
did,
online? Yeah.
Joanne, when we did the person-centered data driven, we showed the flow chart, didn't we?
Mhm.
Okay, so if anyone had attended this last year, when Joanne and I did a series of called person-centered data driven similar webinars, we did get agencies submitting flowcharts. That I know.
Yes.
Again, some of the same people may or may not be here. I don't really know, but we do know that when we did it through the sort of the portal of the person-centered data driven, a lot of people developed it and applied it and found it useful. So that's kind of, we were aware of that. That's why we offered this as a way to try to organize and demonstrate. And the other thing too is the hidden agenda here is you have a state office that's also sort of looking over your shoulder too. And I think by simply showing this management entity that you've tried your best to get these programs, and we know from last week's discussion that some of these rules and regulations were not really helpful in terms of managing and operating this program. But so anyway, again,
I would presume that we could, if you were flow charting all of this, you could put the points at which the unhelpful rules and regulation or barriers within each step of this system. If you wanted to flow that, you could do that too.
I think you caught Linda's attention here.
Yeah, Rodolfo.
Big smile.
Rodolfo, I think you had something you wanted to say in there.
Yeah, we actually use flowchart for our internal processes from eligibility until we conclude the process in taking a client's approved process internally into CERTEC and then into court. So yeah, we have a flow chart through cover A to C, a client process review.
Excellent.
It's very helpful because it helps organize our steps, how the flow of the process goes, what the client needs to do in case there's missing information, missing documentations, and also if an employee resigns and we hire a new one, then he or she already sees the flow chart, and the training is a lot easier because they can refer to the flow chart as many times as they want to try and troubleshoot on their own certain doubts of the process. And if not, then obviously they go into a supervisor to ask for guidance. But yeah, the flow chart helps us enormously moving forward.
Mm-hmm. That makes a lot of sense. And a lot of, yeah, for the various reasons you're saying, I like that, the people, we could keep it, keep it at their desk, right? And diagnose where systemic issues might be happening at certain points. That's a huge reason for doing it. You can look for inefficiencies in the system too, right? Or
Yeah, of course.
places where the process is slowing down and needs improvement. Yeah, all sorts of. So I presume you do for LIHWAP too, the way that client data for LIHWAP flows through your system.
Yes, exactly. We actually have those in place for LIHWAP and LIHWAP, and it helps us a lot.
Mm-hmm. Are they very similar between LIHWAP and LIHWAP?
Yeah, they're similar because of guidelines, even though LIHWAP, I think it's a little bit more restrictive. But yeah, they're very similar from the point of view of policy.
That makes sense. And probably from the point of view of like processing it, if you're the eligibility
Exactly.
person.
Yes, that's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, and that was the whole point of the OCS video. And yeah, so I'm really glad, Rodolfo, that you clearly found this of benefit and usefulness, and it's good to hear from the field. This is something that's, I guess, integrated into the way you operate your agency.
Yeah, thank you.
Yeah, no, it's really good. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, Lawrence has his hand up, his virtual hand.
His virtual hand.
I do. Yeah, thank you, and Rodolfo. That is such a fantastic reminder for everybody on the call that runs LIHWAP as well as LIHWAP, and I know that's probably everyone. Now's a great time to take advantage of flow charting that process too. I mean, if you're going to do the work, you may as well do it for both programs at the same time and get the benefit out of that activity. Just a recommendation.
Well, actually, flow charting, like crystallizes the process and the steps that we take in the program, and it actually helps determine where the processes bog down as well, or where work needs to be done. Because you can, when you look at the flow chart, you can see like how many, a more complex flow chart would even indicate time periods for the process to take effect. Like, for example, should it be like 1 day, 30 minutes, stuff like that. So when you see how the actual versus the flow chart is moving, then you can identify why is this taking time? What is the issue here? What can be done to help move the process along? So it's really helpful to get that thing in there. It also guides us, like, are we compliant? Are we sleeping? Where are we sleeping? And then it's easier for you to find, to pinpoint the area and then find a solution for that thing.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I mean, when we put this on the a single screen here, we realized that the outline with the words could fill up 3 pages. But what we were trying to show is the relationship between the two. And you're right, you could do one and called it flowchart bottlenecks, right? We don't have enough time. We don't have enough staff here to do this. The demand comes in a certain time of the month, things like that. But again, Celia, I think that's really good observations. Really, you can use this for so many purposes. I think that's what both yourself and Rodolfo were suggesting. And Lawrence, for that matter, looking at, the way you were talking about bringing in the LIHWAP as well. I mean, they're very similar. I mean, just editorially speaking, I think agencies in their own little boxes in their programs collect the data, but it doesn't flow. And that's part of the problem, okay? But I think a flow chart helps navigate that, so to speak, in a better way of the organization, and also, frankly, taking advantage of whatever software investment you have, making it work for you. So that type of stuff.
Right, which brings up one of the other purposes for a flow chart is to track the data. If you're thinking about implementing a new software system, upgrading your software system, making changes in it. Obviously, if you have a flow chart in place about how it's supposed to go, or you can even have one for this is how it does now, and this is how we want it to, and here are the key points of difference, then it put you miles ahead in making your changes. Yeah, miscellaneous things of that, of course.
Hey, listen, when you're applying for a grant or something, and you put a flow chart of the organization in there, I'll be honest, it's impressive because you're also being transparent. And what you're saying is, this is how we operate. And we're proud of it. I mean, this is our structure. We've thought it through. But simple graphics like this change people's perceptions very fast of who you are and what you're trying to accomplish. And especially if you don't have to make it 3 pages, but if you put the key sort of points in the travel on the right and number it, wow, that's impressive for other people. I bet you have more luck getting your grants and things like that and funding just because they can see that you're organized in a very clear, structured way, etc. But obviously, I'm an advocate for flowcharts. I think as are Celia and Rodolfo and others who might be on the webinar today, and Lawrence. So
right, yeah. One of the related thing about the funding, I think one way you can use a flow chart like this, and tying in what Celia was talking about, the time frames. You can create a flow chart and show it to like your county commissioners or anybody that you think we need some more funding for staff from. Say, okay, so this is how the data is supposed to flow. This is how the clients flow along with the time frame. And you see here when we with our walk-ins, we're realizing that we're supposed to be processing in 2 weeks, but it's really 30 days. And we're identifying that the reason why it's a bottleneck at that point for the walk-ins is because we only have 1 3/4 time staff person that's available for walk-ins. And if we had more staff available or staff time available, then we could manage the flow better and get this process through and serve our customers better. You can make an argument out of it. You can make a reason for why you're asking for funding out of it.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I bet you that if you go to managed care organizations in healthcare, you probably see flowcharts buried in their materials because that's how they operate. Right? You go here, you go there, in-house referral, how much time you can spend with a client, it's all been thought through. And because they're also paid on that, they're more likely to use a tool like this, where here, you're not paid on that. It's just a suggested approach to help support the running of your agency. So what do you think? Any other comments or thoughts? We have, about 14 minutes left here. So
if there's anyone else that wanted to bring up a point, or somebody else who uses flowcharts, maybe in ways that we haven't really talked about. Something to think about, right?
Yeah, so we can talk about next steps, Joanne, I guess would be the last slide there. So
next steps, what are we going to do from here? So of course, we're going to suggest that you do sketch out a flowchart for how you administer LIHWAP. Rodolfo, you're ahead of the game already. So, but you can maybe look at yours. You can review it. How about? Am I good? Okay. Cool. So
I like Joanne, how you gave us ideas on how to go about doing a flow chart. I love the sticky note concept. I mean, in my mind, I was envisioning the staff meeting and sitting there and having that discussion with everybody and, oh, this and don't forget that, and, write it on a little note and then flow it. I think that engages everybody, and you're not leaving anybody and what they do, out of the process. And I just really like that. It just seems very down to earth and basic and easy to do. So
Yeah, in the Fred, it can include everyone, and it's a process everyone can be in. Yeah, thanks. And you can be fun with it. You can really use. I remember once working with staff around the table and a similar sort of project we were trying to structure. It wasn't really a flow chart, but similar, and you could do the same thing. Where I started drawing stick figures to represent everybody that was in the agency, and like being kind of funny about, like if there's something about, what was in their office, or they always wore a certain hat, or, like their hair was a certain way, right? So I drew these little stick figures of everybody and put their name on it, and everyone on the sticky notes, right? And everybody was just totally into it, and they started putting themselves in at certain places in the process, right? You can get so much buy-in when you can include everybody in that, and anyone can pick up a sticky note and write something on it and put it in. Yeah. Definitely encourage everyone to be into doing that. You can draw pictures on it. You can write flowers on it. I don't care. Yeah. draw water drops because it's LIHWAP. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, before there was all the software and technology, I like Lawrence's comment.
Yeah, Lawrence, you definitely need a nice trimmed beard in yours.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, before all the fancy technology, you were using sticky, Post-its and, erasable boards, and sometimes simple is best because it's much more engaging. I mean, it's just much about the process of building a team building. And frankly, a lot of staff are never asked about what they think. I mean, they're sitting there all day long. In many ways, a lot of the expertise are the people who are sitting behind the desk working with the clients, and they're a valuable resource in this process. So,
yeah, and see how everybody thinks. And once again, you can invite your clients, your customers into the process too, and have them put sticky notes onto a sheet if you want, if they're interested. Yeah, something, the ones that are motivated, not just anybody who comes in the door, right? Yeah.
Especially the crazy ones. We'll bring them in and let them give us their feedback. Sorry.
You might learn something. You never know.
Oh, that's true.
People like to be included. That's really it. Yeah. At least be asked to be included. So.
Yeah.
All right.
So, I guess, Lawrence, anything you want to add, or Joanne, or for that matter, anyone here? So it's fairly straightforward, simple. I think, so Lawrence, yeah, I see you're back. Go ahead.
Oh yeah, I was just going to say, we'd love to see your flow chart. So, that was one of the things that we'd like as feedback. And if you would like to have us review your flow chart and provide some feedback, we'll accept them as you throw them in. We may be able to get the feedback immediately, maybe by the next call. But we love seeing the flow charts and sharing between each other what's going on in your agency, how close we're related, and maybe somebody's got a good idea on a good flow that might help another agency. So love to share when it's appropriate. So you can send those my way. I'll drop my email in the chat here.
So Lauren, should they send?
Oh, incidentally, while I'm doing that, the reason I've got this background behind me.
Yeah, and yes, everyone will have access to the PowerPoint presentation. And
yeah, it'll be posted on the CalCAPA website. This is PowerPoint, as is the previous one and the two new ones that we'll be working on.
Yeah, better. Yeah, definitely they are available. And I'm presuming Lawrence doesn't want you to actually mail him the flip chart with the sticky notes on it. So perhaps you could like translate that into something in Word or PowerPoint or Excel, or
Or,
at least
you
take a
know,
picture of it and send it in.
people once upon a time actually used to use a pencil with an eraser, and you could always just take an 8x11 sheet. Frankly, that's where I usually start, and then you just scan it into your, printer, then you could send it out. So that's another way of doing it, or take a photo, as like Lawrence
Take a
is
photo, yeah.
suggesting.
If you've got
Yeah,
a nice, nicely done flip chart size one, take a photo of it.
yeah,
You decide to do it on a whiteboard, take a
take a
photo.
photo. Yeah. Really, so be creative. I mean, you certainly don't have to make it look like what we did. That was, I saw there's a bunch of chats here. Let me make sure we get everyone here.
Yeah, Lawrence is going to be.
Yeah, I got it right. Okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah.
Okay, good.
And
Okay, good.
yep, you can send Lawrence a photo if you like. And if you want to draw stick figures on it, go right ahead. If you don't want to draw stick figures, that's fine too. Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, Celia's asking if it could go to her email, so don't know if that's possible.
Yeah, so that I don't need to go to your website,
Celia,
download
yeah,
it.
Celia, the way that we can distribute is to post it on the website very easily. So I'll just send you the link. It's just a direct download, okay? Right to your email. I'll send it right to
Okay,
your email.
wonderful.
Okay.
Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yeah, that's for everybody. So not
Yeah,
just
that'll
Celia,
work
but
well.
everybody will get that. Yeah, no problem. No problem.
Okay.
Thank you, Celia. That's good.
Mm-hmm.
You'll get the link emailed. Good.
Yeah, so hopefully this was, Lawrence has a feedback poll here as well.
Yeah. Only
So-
2 questions on this feedback poll. So like, yeah, and everybody needs to be doing that one. That's a
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I actually like this because I was just telling one of my staff to prepare a flow chart because I'm asking him to review our processes. And it was my way of making him look at the processes more concretely and in specific terms and steps. So and so it was good that my idea was correct.
There you go.
Yeah, so that like it's so funny because I just told him to do it like 3 days ago.
Yeah, perfect timing. So yeah, see what he does for LIHWAP and share it in with us.
Yes.
I'm also thinking about DOE bill because it is so complicated. Having a really good flow chart for that mess of a program is probably going to be, critical. So thank you.
Yes, for sure, because it goes through several steps and they have criteria for every step before the unit becomes eligible for DOE. So, it really would be helpful.
Good.
Oh, definitely flowchart it. And you can add some little extra symbols on it, like, and this is where it goes through the mess and then it comes out and whatever.
Yeah.
Yeah, well, others use the Gantt chart as well, because it has the, like the time frames, like in it, which is similar to what I was saying, like, okay, this one takes this much time and etc. So that's another way of making the presentation of the process, because it contains that into the presentation already. But it's a linear presentation rather than this one is like a flowing kind of thing.
Yeah, sometimes linear works better if it's like one thing happens then the next.
Yeah, so it's another way.
If you have choices, then flow charting. Yeah. Well, looks like we have a few minutes. You can use the last 3 minutes to fill out the 2-question feedback poll.
Okay. Oh, is this all right, the Survey Monkey is up. All right.
That's from Cal Capo. That's not Joanne or I. So
Right. That goes back for Lawrence. Yeah.
So I think we're good, and we have a third one scheduled for July 13th.
Mhm.
And
Yeah,
we're
goodness.
gonna,
Yeah.
right, talk about intake and assessment, and the fourth one will be about data management and accountability. Again, applicable across your agency's programs and services, obviously with a target with LIHWAP, but certainly applicable to all your programs and services. So I think Lawrence thanked everyone. I think we're in good shape.
Yeah.
Um,
Nice seeing everyone. Are those we're seeing?
those we can see, yes. So, well, thank you all. And I guess, Lawrence, we're good.
Yeah.
Thanks.